Good evening from my end of the world. We are really four corners. Wait till you hear this. Good evening from Israel. Good morning, like super early, bless your heart, Adam, from Melbourne, Australia. Good afternoon, Scotty, I love you, from Canada, East Coast. And Jeannie, my love, from West Coast, like afternoon. Anyway, we are really international. I used to say we're really international, like Corona, but we're just international, like love. And I'm really happy to be here. My name is Dr. Tova Goldfein. This is TMS Roundtable Recovery. We've been streaming live weekly, and we will continue to bring different guests, authors, doctors, scientists, coaches, people like Adam, who you're going to meet, who has recovered from debilitating, I had to look that up, debilitating back pain and pelvic pain after like a minor muscle injury. And he's going to join us tonight speaking about it. And this was an unusual set of circumstances, but I was excited to invite his coaches that indirectly helped him, that he reached out to. Because in this community, this TMS community, we are finding enormous support, enormous inspiration, a lot of resources, and we're just not giving up on each other. And so that's could be the name of our show. It's just like persistence. Don't give up. The biology of belief, and whatever else you guys are going to talk about tonight. So I'm going to pull back a little bit. I want to introduce Adam Coloretti, beautiful name, and then Scotty Stiles and Jeannie Colwyn. We're going to have a discussion about Adam's healing. And if anybody in the listeners in the Facebook want to chime in and ask questions, feel free. This is an interactive Q&A. And if for some reason you're missing it or you want someone to watch this, it'll be uploaded and recorded to my YouTube channel by tomorrow. So happy. Adam, you reached out to me and said, hey, I have a story.
I did. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. I see Dory in the chat, so hi. My name's Adam Coloretti. I am a chronic pain recovery story, which is amazing, and also a new TMS mind-body coach in the sphere. And yeah, I'll delve into it a bit as we go on, but obviously really happy to be here with Scotty and Jeannie because they were such a massive part of my journey. And yeah, I'd just like to thank them again, but I could thank them a million times and it wouldn't be enough. So super grateful. And yeah, really keen to share my story on here.
That's so sweet. And I just want to say too, and hello, Adam, because it's our first time like speaking directly. I think one of the through lines in this show, you're going to see we want to normalize asking for support, paying for support. You're going to see how indirectly, right? I wasn't working with Adam like one-on-one, but how supportive it can be just asking for help or leaning on the resources that are free or low cost. And I think just to normalize, Adam's had a coach. I've had, I don't know if you've had many coaches, but Scotty, like we all.
I'm always in therapy.
I know, and I think there's like some sort of stigma. I just want to you're not weak if you need support. You're really smart not to try and do this on your own, especially if you've been struggling, waste more and more time. So I just, I'm so passionate about this. And why would you waste more and more and more time? Right. So yeah, that's just my first thoughts as we get started. What do you think, Scotty?
I love that. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone watching. Hi, Adam. It's nice to connect with you again here too. And I can definitely echo what Jeannie's saying. And obviously, we're going to get into more about how it was that we worked together. And we kind of worked together with you, Jeannie and I, through osmosis in our mind-body mingle, I know. And just like you, I was, before I healed, meeting seeing people in podcasts, YouTube interviews, all these things. And I was needing to figure it out for myself too. So there's always somebody out there like that was one of the four of us that is trying to figure this all out. And not everybody moves into, a coaching profession like Adam has done now, which I'd love to hear more about that too. But, it's like this whole story of like the wounded become the healers for other people, because they can share like the testimony of what it was that they went through in order to get better. And that's how we all learned it for ourselves. And that's now how we teach it to others.
Good point.
Yeah. So Adams, let's start with your story. So where do you want to start?
I like a timeline,
Right.
Yeah.
Like you were here, this happened, this happened, this happened. So we can kind of go with you along the journey.
Yeah, perfect. And I think the background as to where I was at in life when this happened was really important. And obviously all those elements sort of tie in together as to form the sort of environment for pain, if you like, or sort of the triggers. So yeah, like you said, Tova, it started with 2 muscular injuries at the gym. And a bit of background, I was like really into the gym, going every day, taking it really seriously, lifting quite heavy. And yeah, there was one where I had a squatting injury in my groin, and then I had one in my back as well. But I really freaked out when it happened. And I kind of put that down to 2 reasons specifically around the injury. The first one was that I didn't have much, if not any, experience with injuries. I'd played a lot of sport growing up, very athletic, but was just really lucky in that sense. And the second aspect, especially with the pelvic and groin injury, was that I never experienced pain in that area. So I was really stressed. It really freaked me out. So those 2 elements were really important. I think the other thing as well was that I had a life imbalance in the sense that I was really into the gym, going to the gym all the time, but other areas weren't sort of adding up. Like I wasn't socializing much. I was very regimented in my food. And like I said, the gym, it was putting a lot of pressure on myself, a very stressful environment. So yeah, just to give everyone listening, I guess, the background and what I sort of looking back kind of understand as to why that happened and why the pain came on. But unfortunately at the time I put it all down to a really serious injury. And the fact that I'd broken something or something was really bad, and I thought, I've really done it here. I'm going to be out for months and years. I thought surgery, I'm going to have surgery. And yeah, that really put me in a bad place. I think as you do when those sort of injuries happen, you kind of wait for it to calm down. You think, is it going to go away? I had a couple of weeks of that and it didn't. And then I sort of started on the, I guess, physiotherapist train and all those modalities. I started seeing the physio, and yeah, just to fast forward a bit. So I had this pain for 6 years, and the first 5 years of it was just in this merry-go-round of physiotherapist, chiropractor, osteopath, trying to find a physical solution and being very stubborn in that sense. And I think that's just what we're taught, right? Like, if it hurts,
exactly.
Structural.
So pain means something is wrong, but this kind of pain that doesn't heal from acute, modalities, it's something else going on. Like immediately your body started learning this, developing a pathway. And before you know it, because like 2 months later, you might've gotten better, but you had all this, you just named 4 stressors.
Yep.
And so maybe it was just like, I pulled my muscle. It would have been like, okay, but you had these other, you immediately felt under threat. Let's put it that way. So your body stayed in fight or flight for 5 years.
That's it. I think, it was a perfect storm in that sense, as it usually is. And that's exactly right. Like, it was just stuck in that fight or flight mechanism. And the injury was just a precursor for my, I guess, brain to express the threat that it felt under, and that sort of pressure environment that I would have been in for months before that happened. And you're right as well. I look back and think, with the injury that I had, I didn't get my injuries imaged straight away. So I think I would have had imagery maybe 3 or 4 months afterwards. Never found anything. So they were completely clear, which, like you said, makes me think that it was really a 3 to 4 week injury, most likely, that turned into 6 years of chronic pain, which is just extraordinary.
Yeah. And of course, it's natural. Yeah.
And I was saying, what do you guys say? I'll say to someone, look, you did the best you could. What do you guys say at that point when they're like, if I would adjust, what would you say to someone?
Yeah.
Well, no one's equipped to know that, if you're doing something physical, then it's not being physically, structurally caused. Like, who would ever think that in their right mind? I mean, similar to you, Adam, like, it was 12 years ago, I was on an elliptical machine, and then that's when I had a lot of pain starting myself. So obviously we're going to just point to it was from this physical movement. But then what's going on when that's persisting? Something's not adding up. And, unless we, hit rock bottom and understand that, like, the pain's not going away and all these other physical modalities aren't helping, we never really have to learn this stuff. So people aren't hearing about it. So it's only natural for somebody to think, well, I have to fix it the same way I got into pain. I have to somehow do something physical to get out of it.
Yeah, and I had back pain when I was swimming, so very similar. But I would say too, part of the healing process, physical healing, emotional healing, TMS healing, is the self-forgiveness piece of this, right? Of, just like Scotty said, we didn't know at that. There's a lot of, if people continue, what keeps us in this mind body fear and this whole cycle is this, like, self-judgment and self-blame and being so hard on ourselves and this pressure. So probably when you first start on your journey, it's like, let's start recovering. And then probably it comes up with, I shoulda, coulda, woulda. And then that's, TMS is like the ultimate surrender, letting go, right? And if we're beating ourselves up all the time because we didn't know better and we should have, it's like, that's part of the journey. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's an awesome prompt, Jeannie. I'll piggyback off of that, because that's how I felt, like, especially when you sort of put it down to a physical problem and the fact that it was structurally caused from my injury. There was a lot of self-blame there, like a lot of, I lifted too heavy and I overdid it, and just the constant thoughts of guilt and shame around that shouldn't have happened. I was in control of that, and my one mistake cost me this much, essentially. And I think the big part of the journey was reflecting on self-compassion and self-love in general, not just in relation to the injury itself. But as I went along the journey, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I think I put that down to the biggest sort of shift in me that resulted in my healing, was just stepping back and facing my emotional world, so to speak, and seeing, wow, there is not a lot of self-compassion there, and not a lot of self-love and acceptance. And I think part of the protective mechanism in my brain was almost as if, well, if I can pin this on a physical issue, I don't have to face my emotional world, and I don't have to be confronted with the fact that there
How
might be
common
something
is
wrong
that,
there.
Adam? That's
And the pain
so
does a good job
normal.
of protecting us from that, because it would rather, the subconscious mind would rather protect us with a something physical in nature to distract us from the emotional, psychological phenomenon that could threaten our lives. At least that's what our brain perceives. So it makes perfect sense. Yeah, it's a perfect distraction.
Yeah, and I'll say too, right? If you look at the through line of what's coming up here, if I, were to ask a client or asking you right now, it's probably not the first time we felt shame or guilt with doing something wrong, right? So it's bringing up, it's highlighting something that we've done with other things, maybe with work or relationships. And so here's just, it's coming out in this area. So yeah, it's much deeper, right? Were you surprised, Adam, like how deep this ran with how you just said so beautifully, guilt and shame? People can't admit that there's guilt and shame in them.
Yeah, well, it's potentially feels shameful in and of itself to admit that that's there. So, yeah, I think it was the big turning point. Just harking back to what I was talking about around thinking it was a physical problem, and like I said, it's 6 years of pain, and I think for at least 4.5 of those years, I was hell bent on this being a physical issue.
Wow, that's a long time to be searching.
Yeah, a lot of money too, which is I know I'm not alone with that. Like that's a big stressor as well, especially when you feel like you're not getting anywhere. Like you're making. I had minor, I guess, progress, but it never stuck with physiotherapists, and I'd always have a sort of a crash, so to speak. And looking back, now I can see it's because it was of an emotional stressor. It had nothing to do with the physical aspect. And I think I just want to highlight a few things as well, which people might relate to in terms of thinking it's a physical problem, because I was in that mindset. Every time I had a flare or every time I had a flare, I felt as if it was a setback and I'd done something wrong, like we talked about with the gym. And I was completely unaware of the emotional triggers that were actually causing that. And I always pinned it on, I ran too far or I walked too far. And yeah, I just think like knowledge is so crucial in this space. And it's like 3/4 of the battle. Once you sort of know what's going on. And that's actually something that I learned from both Jeannie and Scotty. And that was like a huge part of the recovery. So yeah.
Amazing. I think it would be helpful for the audience to understand as well, like the pain, it was natural again for you to think, okay, this must be caused from this physical thing that I was doing at the gym. But, the body heals from broken bones. The femur heals within, 6 months. It's the largest bone in the body. And so like, what's going on? If it's lasting 5 years, what's going on here? I mean, obviously like physiotherapy wasn't working anymore. And, maybe we didn't ever need that at all. And, we could always say, through science and logic, we've got behind us to say that all injuries will heal within 3 to 6 months. And if the pain is persisting longer, what's happening is that neural circuit is being memorized by parts of the brain. And we have all of the studies that show this with phantom limb pain, the understanding that, you can have real physical pain in the absence of any tissue damage at all. And so this is just not taught. And even physiotherapists aren't telling people this unless they're trained in pain science. So, they don't necessarily have to be, because a lot of physiotherapists exist to help people with lots of acute issues, rehabilitation from things like that aren't necessarily chronic. So it's not that they're doing their job wrong. It's just that they don't have the information that we have. And, mind body coaches, like all of us, help people now to understand, right? We can rewire the brain, because that's not being addressed. That's what was missing the whole time. And that's why you didn't get better for so long. That's why none of those things worked. And there's literally science behind why that's happening. So we want people to feel empowered to know, don't keep doing the same thing that's not working for you, and trust that this can work for you. And so you got to a point, obviously, where you thought, okay, this isn't working. I mean, 5 years is a long time. What was it that, caught your eye? Where did it all shift to move into this direction of understanding TMS, neuroplastic mind body?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing, and obviously I don't think it's necessary to get to this point, and I'd love to sort of intervene with people way before this, but I did get to a point where it was like, what have I got to lose? I mean,
I love that. I love that humility. Like, wow.
Even if this sounds, woo woo or too good to be true, as Scotty said, like the physiotherapist route just was not working. So it was really a case of I owe myself to try this.
Wow.
And if it doesn't work, I'm in the same place that I was before. But it did, and it's just, yeah.
You got lucky because your heart wasn't fully in, but yet something must have clicked at some point.
Yeah, I think it was, like I said, I don't think it's necessary to get to this space, but there were definitely elements of desperation. It was. Did
you tell me you went to see, you heard about Laura Moore Mosley or something like that? Like, what was the who and what book before you met Scotty and Jeannie was the turning point?
Yeah, so I've got the book in front of me actually. It's called A Headache in the Pelvis. Yeah, the Wise Anderson Protocol for Healing Pelvic Pain, and it's an interesting book because it combines in a way TMS theory with physical modalities. So it doesn't go the whole way. It's more of a mixture. So I read the book and I was talking about the physical elements like stretching and, different exercises. And I didn't really relate to that as much because I'd been doing that for years. But it was the first book to introduce the psychological component to me and to think, wow, like maybe the tensing of the area, which, for our purposes might not be fully accurate or relevant, but at least it sort of started to get me thinking, well, maybe my anxiety and stress is creating a physical reaction here. So that was the biggest thing, and that opened the door to John Sarno, Howard Schubiner, and then I just became, an expert through Google. Essentially, I did so much research, I became obsessed. I thought, I'm gonna really commit to this.
Can I interrupt you just for 1 second, just to highlight something, and maybe we'll kind of talk about how to bring it, because I really want to firm down. I hear this, I'm sure Tova, Scotty, we hear this, where there's so many excuses why people can't do this work, right? I can't afford the book, the coach, the course. I don't have the time. But I really want to highlight some of these objections are not true. They're not. What's like the deep, and it was like great that Adam was like, I have nothing to lose and I'm willing to do the work. But I just want to call people's attention that there's always a way, it's always figure outable, but we have to be self-aware of, it's like it's self-sabotage when we say, for most of us, we do like 1 hour a week, or, I'm sure coaches could do 2 hours a month, right? And so for someone someone will come to me, Adam, and they're like, 10 out of 10, my pain is affecting my life, 10 out of 10. And then maybe later they're like, I don't have time to work with a coach or do this work or feel my emotions. And I'm like, you are telling me you are 10 out of 10. This is affecting your life, your lifestyle, your mental health, your physical health. But we would still have the time for the physical therapy or the chiropractor, but not have time. It's very convenient to not have time to do the things you don't want to do. And I just want to commend you, feeling our emotions and doing the inner work isn't always what we want to do. And so just if you're in this we're very nicely calling you forward that some of this, I've tried, people come to me and they say, I'm doing it all. And I'm doing all the right things. I'm like, well, I see a couple there, right? Good news is there's some work to be done. So I just want to highlight, not everyone is so open, Adam, to doing this work. We put a lot of objections and excuses. Why do you think I know you said you were in desperation, but people are in desperation and they get a surgery. People are in desperation and go on opioids. Why do you think you were ready to do this deeper work and not be ready for maybe a quick fix or a magic pill?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, and this might not be relatable to everyone, but especially once I started reading Sano and understanding the connection between pain and emotions, it kind of opened my eyes to think, I'm not satisfied in other areas of life. And it made a lot of sense that it was holistic and it was all coming together. And I think I looked at it and thought, well, I want to improve in these areas. Like I want to feel less shame and I want to be more confident and I want to be able to express my emotions, and the suppression, especially of anger, really related to me. I think I allow myself to be angry now, and I never used to, but I never knew or was cognizant that I was doing that. So I think for me, it was a case of the teachings and the work. I saw so much benefit in it anyway, that if it didn't result in healing my pain, I still saw a massive benefit.
Wow.
If that makes sense.
Let's just pause right there. I need you to like scream that from the rooftops and like
because I just want before Jeannie says one thing, because it's about you. You're the solution.
Yes.
You're the problem, and you're the root. And it's such a beautiful coming home story, Jeannie, Scotty.
Well, this is like the ultimate, like worst case, best case. Worst case with like doing the work, you have more self-love, you have more self-compassion, you get, you heal some, like maybe not all of it. Worst case, you heal some, but like people pleasing, perfectionism, like juicier connection with yourself, juicier connection with like life and your loved ones and family, and more self-esteem. And I'm like, yes, I just need people to really get this. Like there's really, and I think too, just like the other point is like, raise your hand if like actually doing the work isn't like as scary. And guys, if it is scary, work with a coach, right? Did like any of this feeling our emotions, like it didn't break us. It didn't like, we didn't die. There's, like, it's not that hard. I mean, I don't want to minimize, but the actual like being with the sensation and being with sadness or accepting it, would you say maybe it's not as, oh my God, like this, it's learning the language of the body, the language. I used to teach a foreign language. It's a foreign language, the body. So we're just gonna little bite size like help you with it. But anyway, that's my rant.
What do you say, Scott? Excellent. What do you say about that?
I think
Scott?
Also it's like natural that we're skeptical before going into this anyway, because we've been primed for years, if not decades, in pain to not trust anything because nothing has worked for us before. So it's kind of like no wonder, right? And pain is the problem, but no, actually the pain is the solution to the problem. And we don't need to give our, our healing resources to other people to fix us, like all these PTs, chiropractors, all these things. Sure, we need like community and coaches as like a team so that we can understand ourselves better. But yeah, so it's no wonder that, the skepticism is such a roadblock. So for people that are new to this, it's like, I don't know, is this going to work? It's hard to know, but you do kind of have to trust that we're all saying it works, and you got to borrow our belief and understand that hope is going to grow as you start to get better. Yeah.
Here's another way you can look at it too. The brain, obviously, like we know, like loves certainty and loves predictability, but it actually feels safe with these things. Right. So it doesn't feel safe to try TMS or mind body healing because it's not predictable. Like no one can tell, a client, how long is this? Okay. With surgery, you have 4 weeks to heal, and then you have 3 weeks of rehab or whatever it is. And I just kind of had this like big epiphany on my Instagram and like talking about it. Like we love the certainty of a surgery. Oh, physical therapy, it's 12 weeks, 1 hour a week. We love that certainty. And then guess what we say? Well, we don't know exactly how many, right? Like, we can give our best. Oh, is that a guarantee? Well, right. Guarantee you have 12, PT sessions, and guarantee you're going to go to the chiropractor. So the brain feels safe with the predictability and the certainty. And TMS healing is like, sorry, we're not going to have the like predictability in terms of like the certainty, it is a more of a surrender, right? And we don't like that. So I just want to highlight this. It's not your fault.
Yeah.
If you're skeptical, you're not doing anything wrong. And just to understand why we do what we do, because safety comes from that certainty and predictability.
Good point.
Yeah.
Adam, could you share with the listeners maybe some of the, we all have these methods and these, strategies that work for various people. And we all know, and you'll find this out as you begin coaching, is just certain people don't relate to certain things. Certain people don't, Nicole Sachs told me on the broadcast, which I had with her years ago, was like, most people are lying when they're journaling. So I'm saying things don't work for everybody. But the point is, tell us what for you really worked for you, and maybe what Scotty or Jeannie recommended, or what didn't work, or, at what point, like, what were the various things that got you moving besides the knowledge? What were the things that you were doing that you're still doing now?
Yeah. I just wanted to talk about Scotty and Jeannie's influence on me because I wanted to get to that. But I think, obviously I discovered both of them on Instagram, and I was just sort of blown away by both of their positivity, I think, in that space. I think that was huge for me because it definitely gave me hope, like in an underrated sense, when you see people who have come out the other side and now they're coaching and they're getting their life back. Like that's a huge inspiration, even if you see it indirectly. So yeah, but I think, and the other thing I wanted to say as well was with Jeannie's work, given that she's a stress coach as well, I sort of saw her combining those modalities and I thought it makes so much sense as to why the stress works with the TMS. And I think that was sort of a bit of an eye-opener too, as to how holistic it is and how stress and anxiety driven it is. So I just wanted to say that as well. But yeah, I started working with Scotty in a one-on-one sense, and the knowledge was huge. But the thing that he sort of instilled in me and that we worked together with, that I like to tell everyone, is the evidence list. That was sort of my
Explain that to some of the new listeners, what the evidence list is.
Yeah, sure. So it was basically just a list of all the reasons why what I was going through was TMS, essentially, and all the reasons as to why a physical or structural cause or explanation was untenable, like what did not make sense.
You're not broken, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that was everything from, I had some times where like I would run and it wasn't, this was a bit further down the line in terms of my healing journey, but I would run and I wouldn't have any pain, but then I would walk and I would be in agony. And a lot of people, relate to the fact that the pain goes away when you're distracted, which obviously doesn't make sense in that sense, or if you go on vacation. And I really related to Scotty's language around that when he was coaching me, and he was so sort of, it just made so much sense that he told me, like, that doesn't make sense if it's physical. I thought, yeah, you're right. Like I think the evidence list was so powerful because I just kept sort of building on that, and to eventually to the point where logic only pointed one way, and I had to give in to the fact that it wore me down.
Sometimes our pain is as strong as our resistance. We have to look at that. We have to see like 6 years, 4 years of like this, and so even when someone gets the TMS methods and the neuroplastic methods, we have to ride that and implement it and apply it. And many times we're not seeing change, like you're running and walking, because there's this still lizard brain that's protecting you, you know, and we have to be really like, you know, Jeannie gets triggered, Scotty still gets triggered, and you're not going into fight or flight. You're just like, oh. So it's very important to understand this process, and the evidence list is a great way to bring calm and safety to the body and brain.
It offsets the distorted thinking that are naturally going to come up from our lizard, lizard brain is creating a narrative that's not true. So, you're like running and you're like, well, I'm feeling great. And then you're walking and you're automatically thinking this is structurally caused. So it's really hard because we're hardwired to associate physical pain with something structural going on. So to override that, we kind of have to keep doing it. And so the evidence list, that's what it's for, right? We're being a detective and finding this evidence for saying, wait a minute, we need to be on to ourselves. And so, sometimes it's tricky because when we were reading the books and we're saying it's TMS, maybe we're not really like thinking so specifically like what's going on for us. So I think that's why, that's always helpful with a coach to be like, what's the evidence? We gotta get this down. We gotta write this out. We gotta remind your brain that you are fine. There is the logic and science behind why you're okay and why this is happening to you.
Yeah, I think that sort of offsets, I think, the natural thought as well. But I think most people go through that you're the unique case, especially if you can't find someone with your specific pain, which if you want to get really specific, the more specific you get, the less likely you will. Like I had pain in a very specific region, and I'm not sure I actually found anyone with the exact area or symptoms or duration. You're just, like I said, the more you deep dive into that, the more it's going to be different. So I think I completely relate to what Scotty said there, in that it brings the focus into what's actually happening and what the evidence says, rather than your almost natural inclination to think, well, just because it worked for that person, my situation is different.
We are not as unique as we think we are. I feel like Nicole Sachs talks about that all the time. We all think that we're like the only one that this can't work for. I know I experienced that phenomenon as well. Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to say as well was I don't want people to get discouraged if not every TMS indicator box is ticked, because it wasn't for me. And I think, typical TMSs like myself, it's perfectionists and the need for every box to be ticked, and the thought that if one of them isn't ticked, then you almost ride that doubt, and that creates a lot of different things. Like for me, it was the fact that, an indicator of TMS is that pain moves around, and mine was very localized, especially my pelvic pain was in the same spot all the time. And only one side of the body, because usually if it's double-sided, then it's more likely to be TMS. So I think I could have latched onto those things more, but I think it was a choice to say, there's so much evidence here. It's almost like, what do you focus on? Do you focus on what's not there, or what is there? So yeah, I've seen that a little bit, and I just want to, stress to people that not all the boxes need to be ticked.
That's so good. Yeah, I think people get micro focused on that for sure.
Yeah.
Was there something that really clicked in our time working together that you feel like you might not have gotten just from reading books and listening to resources online?
I think the biggest thing, Scotty, when we were working together was the evidence list, but also the focus on intention around certain activities and movements, because I think that sort of sent the message to the brain, either I'm safe or I'm still in danger. And I think a big one was returning to sport, because this injury put me out of sport for the length of time, and I wanted to get back into training with other people. And I vividly remember talking to Scotty about it, and we were saying, like, what's the intention here? Because I think with a lot of physical activity I was doing whilst I was in pain, it was almost to test myself, not the love of it, but rather let me see if I can run X distance and not be in pain. But then you're so hypervigilant around the pain itself, and you're scanning and you're monitoring, and it's self-defeating. So I think I remember we had a conversation around that, and the idea was go to the training because you want to go to the training, like live your life, get back to thinking in those terms rather than pain dominating every single decision you make, which it does when you're in the grips of chronic pain. And I remember that, and I really had to think about it. Like I took some time to think and say, why do I really want to go to this? I was trying to sort of not get sucked into the testing of the pain, so to speak, if that makes sense. And eventually I got to the point where I could look at myself and be honest and say, yeah, I actually do want to do this irrespective of the pain. And I went to that training and no pain.
Right.
That was the turning point, I think, because I think the biggest thing holding me back and the biggest thing that was fueling the belief that it was structural was that I was inhibiting myself with physical activity. But once I sort of broke that barrier, and I could then say to myself, well, you went and did this sports training, which was quite intense. And I wrote this on my evidence list, actually. Why would you not be able to walk? Why would you not be able to do this? Like you've broken the threshold. So everything below it, it doesn't make sense. And then, after that, that was sort of the belief that it was structurally caused was sort of couldn't be supported anymore. And that was almost the key kind of.
What about any meditations or journaling or anything else that you might have did that might have helped you calm your nervous system? Anything else that you did you remember?
Yeah. So that chat was more around the belief as to whether or not it was physical. So I think I kind of look at that as a really big tenet, because that sort of fuels a lot of the fear, like the body-based fear. In terms of the other aspect, looking at the emotional side, journaling was huge. Like Nicole Sachs was a huge influence on me in that sense. And really just doing the journaling, feeling my emotions, allowing myself to feel those ugly feelings and the feelings that you don't want to, face, and that the inner child within you is sort of bubbling under the surface and wants a voice. That was really cathartic and a really important release for me, I think, because I was just walking around, being the people pleaser, like massive people pleaser, just saying what everyone wanted to hear and trying to be the perfect, person. But there was so much rage underneath that I was like so much suppression. And the journaling sort of allowed me to be okay with those feelings and those thoughts. And I needed that release for my anxiety.
And it highlights the psychological pressure you were on maybe when the pain started, like what you were saying at the beginning of this call, like there were these things going on, you were putting a lot of pressure on yourself, and interestingly enough, that's when the pain started. And so it's always interesting when we look back, hindsight's 2020, and oh wow, there's the link, that's what was happening. And all I need to do is just adjust a few things in my life and recognize that my personality trait and the pressure I put on myself is like putting my brain in this high alert danger mode. And now I have the ability to like take that remote control and just turn the pain dial down by adjusting, the neurochemistry that's being sent from the stressors in my life. Ooh, it's so powerful.
Yeah,
I know. And it's also like sometimes not even that much work, right, Scotty? Like it's like
it's not easy, but it's simple, right? Like to see, okay, I can do this. But we have to kind of really, it's kind of like a lock that's kind of hard to figure out at first. But once you've gotten it, it's like, and you've repeated it a few times, then it just comes natural. And then that's your new subconscious programming.
Yeah, it's your new neural pathways. And like, not everyone needs to journal speak. I'll just be the advocate for like amazing that if it works, but I think people are like, if I do XYZ, then I have to, right? And I think it's just great to highlight that even Tova said, like, what worked for you? It's not that, of course you did this. It's that different things work for different people and doing it from the intention, like you said, right? Like if you do journal speak every day out of fear, if I don't do this, right, that's not the same as like you get to. And like what would you say to yourself if you skipped a day? Was there a lot of pressure or did you feel like you were able to?
I think I was thinking about that when you were talking about doing the work before, because that was a big shift as well. And I found it personally to be so self-defeating if you're putting so much pressure on yourself to do the work, because like Scotty highlighted, that's what got you in pain in the first place. So it has to be,
it has to change.
It has to be a shift. And another thing that Jeannie made me think of before is when we were talking about, you know, why did I feel the need to commit? I got to a point where I thought, given all the links between people pleasing and perfectionism around my pain, I said to myself, you know, it's almost like part of me wanted to heal and get better with the pain and still be a people pleaser, if that makes sense. Like I don't have to deal with it.
Can I interrupt and say something very profound?
Yes.
None of us have changed in our TMS journeys. Like, you know, none of us have changed who we are. What we learned is that you can put pressure on yourself. You can be a people pleaser, perfectionist. You can do all these things and not have physical pain. You could just feel uncomfortable with that relationship, or you could just feel like you're really driven and motivated. We can be who we are without having the physical pain because we're connected to the deeper feelings that we have. And we have a relationship with our anger and fear. We feel our rage. We're expressing rage in a healthy way. So you are still who you are. And you'll still people please, but you won't have groin pain.
And I think as well, like looking at that from another lens too, is being yourself with this is huge. So I think there's reflection around the fact that, to use like perfectionism, for example, is, and that's where, you know, Scotty and Jeannie's posts in the early days for me was so important, because really questioning where my perfectionism comes from, and is that really me, or is that sort of a mask? And even like doing sort of the journaling and like within a child work, I look back and thought, you know, I haven't always been like this. So if you can kind of just be yourself through this process, and it's really like it's a powerful sort of self-discovery tool. The other thing I wanted to say as well, which is what you mentioned, Tova, about different things working for different people, is that, I did journaling, but somatic tracking, for example, which was part of my sort of education, becoming a coach. And I know it works for so many people, and there's so much science behind it, which I completely understand. I didn't do it at all. So
me neither.
So it's one of those things where it's like, as a coach, I just think, you know, all of these strategies are getting back to regulating the nervous system and reducing the fear. They're all just tools. So however you get there is it's personalized to you. And like if someone came to me, sometimes like people come to me and they say, no, I don't want to journal. It's not my thing. And that's fine. Like there's so many tools. And it's not, like Jeannie was saying, it's not, you know, you're not like stuffed, for want of a better term, if you don't do that. Like there's plenty of tools out there, and I'm confident that there's one for you. So
I was gonna say, like I think it was Dr. Strax said that when he was interviewed, and like in Sarno's kind of age, right, there weren't as many tools out there and there weren't as many options. And so back then it was more in the early days, I guess, that was the gold standard, right, of creative expression or journaling. And now that we have so many other options and tools based on neuroplasticity. So that's interesting too. So if you read maybe Sarno's thing, of course, he's not talking about somatic tracking and some of these other benefits. So that could be, a good thing to remember. And I was going to say too, Adam, like all of us know it's kind of this cool intersection of all this work with TMS actually has been helping you all along on your business journey too. And, being a coach, right? Like being a coach, if you're trying to be perfect with every post, every client, I can never make a mistake or there's no type, so it's like people pleasing, right? If you let your clients 3-hour sessions and, oh, you're late, no problem. You're going to change, right? So it's like the ultimate. So you've been training, right? And like being really prepared for business by TMS. And for someone else, it's preparing, the TMS journey has like really helped them in a relationship, because here you go, people pleasing in a relationship, perfectionism with your partner. So anyway, that's just a beautiful, journey too of like, wait a minute, I'm kind of like getting this, like things that would cause me a lot of anger are not as much because I'm actually feeling my anger from time to time. So it's not like this pressure cooker, right? So anyway, just to highlight how fun that is. I don't know if you've made that connection about how like well set up you're going to be because of this journey on your business journey.
It's a good segue into saying like how your life is now compared to how it was before. Like, tell us what's going on, what you've been up to.
Well, I think that's so pertinent because I don't think I would have had like the perfectionism would have overridden me starting my own business 5 years ago. Like it just wouldn't have been on the cards. Like you said, Jeannie, like it's the work helps in so many other areas. And I think it's important to look at it like that. I think it's so hard for people because the pain, like I said before, it dominates when you're in the grips of it, like in chronic pain. And it might be hard to hear for some people, but the pain really is the symptom. And once you address sort of those life causes and triggers, so to speak, then the pain melts away. I think that's what I sort of felt in my own journey. I was so focused on getting rid of the pain and I didn't want to face the overarching causes emotionally. And once I did, then the byproduct was the pain leaving.
Yeah. And isn't the antidote for like all of our, maladaptive personality traits and coping mechanisms that include, perfectionism and people pleasing, all these things, which is just fear. It's just like creating threat in our system. The perfect thing to offset that is leaning into what we value, leaning into what it is that you do want, leaning into the fact that I think when we were working together, that's when you decided, I want to do some training and take a coaching certification. And so, well, that's the perfect thing to tell your brain and nervous system that you are actually safe, is to just focus on your life. What can empower you? What can make you, love yourself more?
Yeah. And I think, like, to answer your question as well, it might not be so much sort of tangible things in life. I mean, it could be, obviously, but I think for me, it's really just my inner environment is so much better. Like it's quieter. It's less judgmental. It's less self-critical. And you can't really see that on a person. I mean, if they, in their expression, you might be able to. But I think that's the thing I'm most sort of grateful for from the experience. It's subtle, but it makes a sort of massive difference. And like you were talking about, Jeannie, like you relate to people differently. You show up differently, and that sort of leads to, tangible things in life, but it's more enjoyable and it's less stressful, I think is the best way to put it. But yeah.
Yeah. And if it hasn't led to like massive tangible results yet, it is on its way, right? I mean, if we think about, calling in clients and business and romantic relationships or just, friends, family. I mean, when we're dysregulated, when we're all consumed, when we don't know how to feel our emotions, we can't help, be there for other people. I mean, this is just massive life lessons on top of life lessons. But What would you say to someone who, like last night I had a client, I was like, okay, you can cringe when I say this, but there could be, right, some grace or like a gift, or there could be like a reason why God, universe, or maybe if you don't believe in anything spiritual, like why this is happening. What would you say if someone said like, there's no reason for I just want the pain to be gone. I want like the magic pill. And I don't want to go through this like growth. I know this is like kind of a deep question, but someone who's like, I don't believe you. Give me the red pill, chronic pain, back pain, pelvic pain gone. Mm-hmm. What would you say to someone?
Like, I don't have repressed emotions. I'm not angry. Oh no, I'm not
yeah,
afraid.
Like people just want to wake up and not be in pain. And I think,
do you know part of the quantum? I mean, I study Joe Dispenza a lot, and some of the law of attraction and the placebo. We all know about that, but I lean heavily into it, especially spiritually. It's very important to not be a victim, and in order to not be a victim, which we all know, we talk about that too. But in order to see there's a reason for this. And I always think it would have happened anyway. This was a wake-up call, and it would have happened in one form or another. It's almost like you took the bullet in this way and you actually caught the bullet, and so it's important to frame it for some people so they can come out of their egos and be like, I am grateful. And so I've interviewed so many different people on another broadcast, in Hebrew, and that healed everything from cancer to MS and you look at how they saw it as, I needed that disease. I needed that pain. And for some people, this is the way out. And this is the healing journey. And it just softens it, because we do have a clutch on, like, why am I sick? And why is my body attacking me? And as opposed to, I love my cancer. And I know we know people that are talking about, Anita, what's her name? She's like living to, like, what is her, living to die? Or, like, it's very important to understand this part of sickness and the part of the human body and the part of it's a very important point for people who are ready for it. So I'm answering your question, Jeannie, and we'll hear what Adam and Scotty have to say. When people are ready, it can be the switch for them. It draws them to themselves. What do you think?
Yeah, I think as much as people might not want to hear it, and I probably didn't want to hear it at the start of my journey, is that it is happening for a reason. Mm-hmm. It's not your body attacking you. Like, the body is so smart and so sophisticated and just amazing that assuming it's not structurally caused, that there is some sort of emotional reason to it. And I think that was a big thing for me, because I wanted to hold on to the fact that, like you talked about, Tova, being a victim and saying, this sort of, with my pain, it was like, why is this happening to me? And I'm just unlucky, and something's gone
wrong. Life isn't fair.
Yeah. And I think it's you lose agency, and you lose control in that sense. So yeah, I think, and then you can almost, if it's emotionally caused in a sense, then you kind of have the power over it, and you can sort of do something about it. So
what do you say, Scotty, to that?
Yeah, I would add, for anyone that's listening and saying, I don't know, what about me? I don't know, did this work for me? It's like, everything we're saying here is that the pain is an invitation to uncover the deeper needs your soul wishes to convey.
Wow, say that
again. This is my tagline all across social media. The pain is an invitation to uncover the deeper needs your soul wishes to convey.
Yeah.
So I want you all to answer Jill's question. Why a symptom will hold on even when her mind knows it's TMS. Why does the symptom persist?
Well, Scotty just said it twice.
Okay, but give her another answer.
I think one thing that I that comes to mind with me, and this might more be related to pain, so I'm not sure how relatable it is with other symptoms, but I think there's a difference between like that concept of knowing is interesting to me, because for a period of time for me, I thought I believed and I knew that it was TMS, but then my actions were contradicting my supposed belief. So that leads to a conflict, because the brain, you know, I think Jeannie alluded to this before, but it's, you know, we're wired to protect from threats and we want to be safe. And sometimes safety is just what we're used to. And like, if we're used to pain, then that's it. And once we get in that cycle, then it takes a while to, you know, convince the brain that we're safe. And it's going to take a lot for the brain potentially to shut off the pain, in the sense that it needs to be quite convinced that that's the case, that we're safe. Then I'll turn the pain off. So I think for me, I was telling myself, you know, this is TMS, but then I was hesitating when I got off the couch, and I was hesitating doing physical exercise, and I was dreading having to sit for periods of time. So I think, that's just what I thought of in terms of the actual conflict. Your actions, as much as possible to me, need to align with that belief. Otherwise, the brain won't believe you.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm left-handed, and if I wanted to write right-handed, it's not going to work the first time. I'm going to have to practice more and more and more. And that is just how the brain works. And the autonomic nervous system is ruled by the subconscious mind, which is what's producing the pain. And it was just learned because it was repeated so many times. And if the brain can learn it, the brain can unlearn it. So, you know, just because it hasn't happened yet, we don't necessarily need to worry why. Well, scientifically, the why is because that's how the subconscious mind and autonomic nervous system works. We can kind of let go of that, reduce the pressure by not worrying and not looking at our clocks and saying, why has it not gone away? And keep rewiring the brain. And eventually that new pain-free neural circuit will take root and start to, you know, dominate. And then the pain signals will stop firing as much.
And just what Jill said just then in her comment, I think is true, when she said, perhaps when I eat certain foods, my mind expects burning mouth. It's that sort of that expectation and that fear around it that sort of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I know that sort of
what do you think
relatable to me.
This was it's an insight that I wouldn't have figured out, but a couple of people on the broadcast they were like, okay, pain, it's okay. Burning mouth, you want to burn, it's okay. I'm not scared of you. It's okay. Come, we'll be together. We'll go eat some hot sauce together. It'll be okay. I'm not going to have an unhealthy relationship with you. I'm going to invite you in. I'm going to understand. We're in this together. I mean, this is partly, Jill, different ways that we relate to the symptom. Something I'm learning with PRT work is what are the symptoms saying? What is this burning mouth saying? What does it need from you? And I'm highly recommending the PRT workbook because it's well written, simple, and it's got some incredible meditations and journaling prompts. And I just love the way it was written. It was like I love Alan Gordon's. I love like Howard Schuberner's book on Learn Your Pain, but it's heavy, it's big, it's thick. There's a lot there. And I love, David Hanscom's app, but it's like, for some of us, it's just too much. Well, this PRT workbook for me, who gets a little overwhelmed with the information, just in teaching it and bringing it to the people, I liked the way the PRT workbook was laid out, and it was just written very well. If that may be. And there's a lot on compassion and love, because that's what it comes down to, guys.
Absolutely.
You're just not liking your mouth. You're like, shit, here's my mouth burning again. And I know you're human, and it must be a difficult time, Jill. You're being very brave and courageous. but it could just be like you're almost at the place of where you're having this, I mean, really like a love affair with your symptom. Can we say that sometime? Like you have to kind of invite it in and don't leave it out in the cold. What do you guys think about that?
I think, yeah, I wanted to go on from what Jill was saying, because I think I relate to that, Tova, in that with the burning mouth sensation around certain foods, and I know it's really hard in the moment, but like you said, if you can be just okay with it, if that's the first step, then it's training your brain to say, oh, well, now Jill isn't that worried when I eat that food. Maybe the symptom's still there, but the fear goes down, and then the brain I always like to think of it like as a conversation with the brain. And then the brain thinks, oh, well, Jill's not that worried. Maybe I don't need to send the burning mouth next time. Beautiful. Not that it might not be that quick, but it's just, it's that conditioning over time. And I had that specifically with getting up off the couch. And it sounds really monotonous, but it was like a really sort of important step for me. I used to be so hesitant, and I was expecting the pain, and I thought, oh, this is going to hurt. I sort of kind of like primed myself to get up. It took forever. And then I started to think of it in these terms, like what message am I sending to the brain? And I was convinced that I need to get up. I need to start getting up normally to send the message to my brain that it's safe to get up. Now, that did initially lead to a spike in pain, and it wasn't, it didn't happen overnight. But I think getting back to regular life and regular routines, and probably shouldn't say it in these terms, but this is how I said to myself. I was like, how would someone who isn't in chronic pain act? Would they take that long to get off the couch?
Or if nothing was even dangerous, how would you act, right? Because nothing is dangerous.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and just like the last point for this, Jill, I would say it's not the symptom, the pain, it's your reaction to it. And just another way of saying, can you be okay with the pain? So that's really good stuff.
Yeah.
Hi, Carrie.
There's another question. I had a spiral yesterday in which I realized I needed to reconfirm that my severe scoliosis was not causing my pain. And I realized, wow, I'm not fully there, and knowing it is TMS when I actually thought it was. It surprised me. Wow. Amazing. Good point.
Yeah. I'd be interested to hear what Scotty and Jeannie think about this, but that sort of makes me think that, it is good to confirm, and if you need something that will help you further cement that belief, then I feel like don't hesitate to get that, whatever that is. And I think it's a really powerful realization for Carrie to have, that she's not there yet, but she's well on the way in terms of that belief. And that's really the medicine for this. I think whenever I talk to someone and read something, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but mindset to me is everything with this. And I can tell someone's mindset based on how they talk, that they're thinking about it in the right way. And I get that vibe with Carrie and what she said. So I think that's great.
Yeah, I would, I want to say hi, Carrie. She is one of my clients, and this idea of scoliosis. Yeah, I mean, we know that people can have scoliosis and have no pain, so perhaps this could be a doubt to further unpack, right? And
I've had it.
Even though we're consciously saying, oh well, we know it's TMS, there might be still some subconscious programming going on that it's that worm in the ear that's always remembering, wait, what about the scoliosis? What about that? So we can really hammer down and unpack that it's not that. And you're going to feel a lot safer in your nervous system, because you don't need pain if you have scoliosis. It's plain and simple. And maybe we just have to repeat that enough times, to get that neural pathway laid in, so that every time you think of scoliosis, you go, So what? Scoliosis, whatever.
Well, as a chiropractor for 40 years, on the record, scoliosis does not cause pain.
Yeah.
Neither do disc herniations.
Yeah.
And I think as well, like, I love that from Carrie. It's like we were talking about the evidence list before, and I did that with my healing, that she went back to her letter to say that it wasn't. And just reaffirming that. And that was the same with me. Like, I looked at my evidence list every day. And I just, whenever the doubt came,
we need it. And you guys knew what you need. Like, you knew what you needed. We have to know. Listen, this is another gift about pain. It's teaching you about yourself. It's pulling you back to inside to say, know me, be with me. This is what my needs are. These are my, so it really is an interesting thing. Like, if that's who you are, if that's, you want to leave the house and check the lock in the oven 5 times, please go ahead. It's going to make you feel better. It's not called OCD. It's not called OCD. It's called sensitivity. It's called being aware, you know?
Yep.
So I would love the 3 of you to leave our listeners. That's some really nice people in the studio tonight, and there'll be some people looking at this. It'll go live tomorrow, and there'll be some questions I'll send to you guys. There's been a lot of wonderful response on my YouTube channel. So we're on a roll here, guys, bringing some great content and some amazing insights. So if 3 of you could leave, you know, what you think is like an important insight or a take home with the audience, I'd love to round up with that.
Oh,
Scotty, you go first. Repeat that sentence again about the soul.
Yeah, the pain is an invitation to uncover the deeper needs your soul wishes to convey. And I mean, yeah, I mean, if you're at the beginning of this, or even if you're kind of been doing this for a while, you know, don't give up. It's we say this all the time, is that healing is not linear, and there may just be more that you haven't had, you know, brought to your awareness, and we can help. You know, all 4 of us can help you with that. There is a way to get there. It's not linear. I know for myself personally, like, I had symptoms up and down for a good 5 years. It's only really in the past few years that it wasn't so crippling. And so that's not to scare anyone. That's just to empower you that you will get better, even if it feels like it hasn't yet. And so the biggest thing I would say to anybody is that healing is possible. It's impossible for it to not be possible. You have a brain and nervous system. If you are alive and you have a heart beating and you have a brain, you can heal.
Beautiful.
What would you guys say?
I think it just made me think of what Scotty said, that given neuroplasticity, if you got into pain, you have to be able to get out of pain. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. The wiring is the same one way or the other. And then I was also going to say as well that knowledge is power with this work, and you have an innate knowledge of your own body that no one else has. So retain that power in the face of everyone else, really, and trust your intuition with your own healing and what feels right to you. Because like you said, Toba, it's all about self-compassion and love. So I think please don't feel pushed into any specific strategy or modality, and really, trust what works for you.
Amazing. Jeannie?
Yeah, I would say it's absolutely going to be more emotional undercut, right? There's more emotional work to be done. If you aren't healing or things aren't working, it's probably not like more of the doing. And so like the quote that comes up, like I use on Instagram, it's like, it's not, you know, healing chronic pain isn't what you're doing, it's who you're being, right? So like how Adam said beautifully, like the intention before he does something, and right, how you react to things, what, you know, how you're being. So are you actually being in your body? Are you feeling your emotions? Are you allowing them? Are you not just, so it's much less of like, how much are you doing? Well, I did 3 hours of work today versus someone else who's like, I did 10 minutes, but just throughout the day I had ease, right? You could be like driving like this, or you can be in the car for the exact same half an hour more at ease. So I think there is a way to be more at ease throughout the day, to have symptoms and not be in fear and have the fear thought loops. And it's always possible. So wherever you are, absolutely, there is more, there is more, like emotional, I don't want to say emotional work, but there is, an invitation to go deeper. And maybe that's what it's meant for you, right? You weren't meant to look at when I was starting out, like I was like a breathwork teacher, right? When I first started, it's like, and then after, this many years, it's like, now I'm here to help a different population and go deeper with this work. So there's always like a next level with your career, with your relationships. And so this is like the deeper invitation.
Beautiful. I love it. So thank you all for blessing my studio. This is the first time I did something like this, so it's a really wonderful idea. So we'll meet again for sure.
And so much credit because of the time change this week with figuring all out the times. Yeah. Good job, Kuba.
The time buddy.
I was really triggered. I was very much triggered, and I probably contacted you guys like a dozen times to make sure. So thank you all for your patience with me, and bless you in the audience, and have a wonderful rest of the day, and we'll meet again soon. Bless your hearts. Thank you.
Bye everyone.
Bye everyone.
Bye. 1 second. 1 second.